Hello, I am Rohini Thomre. In this video, I will be going to explain defect management process. The more focused process and testing will allow the less buggy software in the market. Defect prevention is much more efficient and effective in reducing the number of defects and also is very cost effective to fix the defects found during the early stage of software process. Most of the organizations conduct defect discovery, defect removal, and then process improvement, which is collectively known as a defect management process. The foremost goal of defect management process are to prevent the defect, to detect defect early in the software development lifecycle, then to minimize the impact of defect, also to resolve the defect with less impact, and to improve the process. This diagram shows the stages of defect management process. It consists of defect prevention, deliverable baseline, defect discovery, defect resolution, and process improvement stage. Now let us begin with defect prevention process. Defect prevention is the process of improving quality and productivity by preventing the injection of defect into a software work product. Defect prevention is the best method to eliminate the defect in the early stage of testing instead of finding the defects in the later stage and then fixing it. This method also cost effective as the cost required for fixing the defects found in the early stages of testing is very low. The major steps involved in defect preventions are: first, identify the critical risk. To identify the critical risk in the system which will impact more if occurred during testing or in the later stage. The next major step involved in defect prevention is estimate expected impact. For each critical risk, calculate how much would be the financial impact if the risk is actually encountered. And the next major step involved in detection is to minimize the expected impact. Once you identify all critical risks, take the topmost risks which may be harmful to the system if encountered and try to minimize or eliminate the risk. For risk which cannot be eliminated, it reduces the probability of occurrence and then financial impact. The next stage of defect management process is deliverable baseline. When a deliverable, that is either system, product or document, reaches its predefined milestone, then you can say a deliverable is a baseline. In this process, the product or the deliverable moves from one stage to another, and as the deliverable moves from one stage to another, the existing defect in the system also gets carried forward to the next milestone or stages. For example, consider a scenario of coding, unit testing and then system testing. If a developer perform coding and unit testing, then system testing is carried out by the testing team. Here, coding and unit testing is one milestone and system testing is another milestone. So, during unit testing, if the developer finds some issues, then it is not called as a defect, as these issues are identified before the meeting of the milestone deadline. Once the coding and unit testing have been completed, the developer handovers the code for the system testing, and then you can say that the code is baselined and ready for the next milestone. Here in this case it is called as a system testing. Basically, The deliverables are baseline when the changes in the deliverables are finalized and also all possible defects are identified and fixed. Then the same deliverable passes on to the next group who will work on it. The next phase of defect management process is defect discovery. It is almost impossible to remove all the defects from the system and make a system as a defect free one. But you can identify defects early before they becomes costlier to the project. We can say that the defect discovered means it is formally brought to the attention to the development team, and after analysis of that the defect development team also accepted it as a defect. There are few steps involved in the defect discovery. The first steps involved in defect discovery are: find a defect. Identify defects before they become a major problem to the system. The second step is to report defect. As soon as the testing team finds a defect, their responsibility is to make the development team aware that there is an issue identified which need to be analyzed and fixed. And the third major step involved in defect discovery is to acknowledge a defect. Once the testing team assign the defect to the development team, it's the development team's responsibility to acknowledge the defect and continue further to fix it if it is a valid defect. The next phase of defect management process is defect resolution. In the above process, we have discussed the testing team has identified the defect and reported to the development team. Now, here the development team needs to proceed for the resolution of defect. The major steps involved in the defect resolutions are as follow. First step is to prioritize the risk. Development team analyze the defect and prioritize the fixing of the defect. If the defect has more impact on the system, then they make the fixing of defect on the higher priority. The second step involved in defect resolution is to fix the defect. Based on the priority, the development team fixes the defect. Higher priority defects are resolved first and lower priority defects are fixed at the end. The next phase is report the resolution. It's the development team's responsibility to ensure that the testing team is aware when the defects are going for the fix and how the defect has been fixed. That is, by changing one of the configuration files or making some code changes. This will helpful for the testing team to understand the causes of defect. The final stage of defect management process is process improvement. Though in defect resolution process, the defects are prioritized and fixed from the process perspective, it does not mean that the lower priority defects are not important and are not impacting much to the system. For process improvement point of view, all the defects identified are same as a critical defect. Even these minor defects give an opportunity to learn how to improve the process and prevent the occurrences of any defect which may impact system failure in the future. For process improvement, everyone in the project need to look back and check from where the defect was originated. Based on that, you can make changes in the validation process, baselining document, review process, which may catch the defects early in the process, which are less expensive. As the conclusion, The defect management process should be followed during the overall software development process and not only for specific testing or development activities. So, all processes like review process, static testing, inspection, etc., need to strengthen, and everyone in the project should be serious about the process and contribute wherever necessary. Senior management in the organization should also understand and support the defect management process. This is all about defect management process. Thank you for patience listening.